Hi, good morning. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys this video lesson, and it will help you finish the classwork assignment for today, and you have an exit ticket. Now remember that the exit ticket is due today. The classwork assignment is due tomorrow. So just make sure that you're turning in your exit ticket today. If you have your classwork done, perfect. You can also turn that in, but you may have until tomorrow for the classwork. All right, so take out your notebook. Let's go ahead and write your objective for today, which is approximating the value of square roots. We started it on Friday, but I know that we didn't get to finish, so we're going to practice a little more today. Sorry, I don't know if I let you guys finish that. Okay, so I told you guys that you can use a calculator. I'm going to post this link for a Google app that you can put into your Chromebook. So if you would copy that link, which I'll post in your folder, what you do is you go ahead and paste it into your Google search bar. And what it does, it takes you to this place where you can download a Google app. So it gives you this calculator that you can download. Now I already downloaded it. So once you get onto here, yours should say something like download app. And if you do download the app, you can make the calculator just pop up just like that and move it around wherever you need it. Now, say for example that you close it, you should be able to open it back up by going into your apps. Okay, so that's a good way. I have it pinned on my toolbar over here in the bottom, so I'm just going to go ahead and minimize it and then take it out whenever I need it. So just have it right there on your toolbar and minimize it and open it whenever you need it. Okay, so that's just in case you don't have your cell phone or something like that. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So last week you guys wrote these down in your notes. This is not new, but we're going to use them today to make some approximations of other square roots, okay? So the value of the square root of a number is a value that times itself gives you the original number. So very simple. For example, if I find, let's say for example, right here, the square root of 25, that's equivalent to 5. Why? Because 5 times 5 will give me 25. So that's what we kind of looked at last week on Friday. So let's go ahead and move on and apply that to what we're going to do today. So when you find the square root of a perfect square, what do I mean by a perfect square? Those are the squares that are easy to find the square roots of because the square root turns out to be a whole number. So for example, the number 36, we call that one a perfect square. And the reason for that is because if I was to draw a square and that square had an area of 36 square units, I know exactly what the side length should be. The side length should be 6 because 6 times 6 will give me 36. So in other words, that turned out to be a whole number. The square root of 36 is exactly 6 and we're done. That was easy. That was simple, right? It was simple because that is the 36 was a perfect square. Whenever I have something that's not a perfect square, then I have to take another step that's not as simple as this one right here. For example, square roots of non-perfect squares. When you find the value of the square root of a non-perfect square, you must approximate it. In other words, you will need to use decimal values. You will get close, but not exact, because a true value is a decimal that does not terminate and does not repeat. So whenever I find the square root of something that is not so simple, like that square root of 36, what if I have something like the square root of 27? Now I go back to my list that I wrote on Friday, and wait a minute, I don't have a square root of 27 written up here. And why is that? Because 27 is not a perfect square. And if I had a square with an area of 27, I actually wouldn't be able to think of a whole number that times itself will give me 27. I'm going to have to approximate it. I'll get close, but I won't get exact. A good way of telling about how much it would be is if I look at my list right here, I have the square root of 25 there, and I have the square root of 36 there. So now I know that somewhere in between those two belongs the square root of 27. Somewhere between the square root of 25 and the square root of 36. So now I know that it must be greater than the number 5, but less than the number 6. So I'm going to say the square root of 27 is about, I kind of feel like the 27 is probably going to be closer to the 25 than it is to the 36. So I'm just going to do like a rough guess of like about maybe 5.2. Now this is just a very rough estimate. If I really wanted to get close, I would have to go ahead and try my multiplications, which is what we're going to do on the next examples. Let's do it where we actually get as close as possible as we can get. So it says approximate the value of the square root of 60 to the nearest tenth. Now I know last week some of us were going nearest hundredth, in other words 2 decimal places. Some of us were even going as far as 3 decimal places. But today I'm only going to get as close as possible with just 1 decimal place because I know that this decimal doesn't terminate and also doesn't repeat. All right, so let's go ahead and step 1 is always going to be to decide which 2 square roots I'm going to use. So let's think of the square root of 60 and let's look at our list of square roots that are easy. And there we go. I found the square root of 49 and the square root of 64. Somewhere in the middle belongs, somewhere in between there belongs the square root of 60. So now I know that the value that I'm looking for is probably some number greater than 7 but less than 8. Let me write it down so that it makes more sense to me. So I know that the square root of 60 has to be greater than the square root of 49, but it has to be less than the square root of 64. And then I know that this square root of 49 is 7, the square root of 64 is 8, so it has to be somewhere between 7 and 8. Okay, that's my first step that I just kind of, and I'm going to highlight right here. I know it's got to be greater than 7. I know it's going to have to be less than 8. All right, let's move on to our step 2. Step 2, decide which decimal values to use. Multiply decimal values by itself to get close to 60. Now we said it had to be greater than 7, but less than 8. Okay, now I know that the square root of 60 has to be somewhere between there, and I know that this is the square root of 49, and I know that this is the square root of 64. Now, right smack in the middle between 7 and 8 belongs 7.5. Now look at those numbers. I think it has to be closer to the square root of 64. I believe that the numbers that I'm looking for are going to have to be somewhere there. In other words, greater than 7.5, because I just feel like it's going to be closer to the 64 than it is to the 49. So I'm going to start with a number like maybe 7.7 times 7.7. Now this is the part where we get our calculator and we type in 7.7 times 7.7 and I get 59.29. Oof, that's very close. Remember, we're trying to get close to exactly 60, but we're not going to get it. We're going to just get close. Now this is a little too low, so I'm going to try one up. And we're going to get our calculator. Let's clear that one. We're going to say 7.8 times 7.8 equals. And on that one I get 60.84. Now I need to go ahead and look at those. I got pretty close. One of them is too low. One of them is too high. My step 3, make a conclusion on which is the closest to 60. That's your best approximation, now located on a number line. So let's think about this one that's too low. In order for this number to get all the way to 60, it's off by 0.71 of a whole number. This one is above the 60 by 0.84 of a whole number. So for that reason, right here is my closest one. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the square root of 60 is approximately 7.7. And that's my best approximation to the nearest tenth, meaning using only one decimal place value. So that we're going to get our highlighter. Let's go ahead and highlight our answer. Now we're going to place it on a number line. So my number line I'm going to write down right here is 7. And I'm going to write right there an 8. Now remember, if this is right in the middle, 7.5, 7.7 should be closer to 8 than it is to 7. So maybe I'm going to put it about right there. That right there is going to be the square root of 60. That's how I place it on a number line. Okay, let's try one more example. Approximate the value of square root of 34 to the nearest tenth. Locate the value on a number line. Step 1. We need to look at our square roots right here and decide where the square root of 34 belongs. So right here I have the square root of 25, and right here I have the square root of 36. Somewhere in the middle should be the square root of 34. So now I'm going to say the square root of 34 has to be somewhere greater than square root of 25, but less than the square root of 36. And I know that this is 5 and that this is 6. So it's got to be somewhere in the middle. Okay, that's my step 1. Okay, now step 2, I need to go ahead and start using those decimals to multiply them to each other and try to get as close as I can to the square root of 34. So if this right here is exactly 5.5, do we think that this one, the square root of 34, is going to be closer to the square root of 25? Or is it going to be closer to the square root of 36? It looks like it's going to be closer to this one. So I'm going to go ahead and start using numbers that are here, close to the 6. So once again, I'm going to start with something like 5.7 times 5.7. So we're going to get our calculator. Let's clear this one. 5.7 times 5.7 equals. And I get 32.49, too low. So I'm going to keep going. 5.8 times 5.8. 33.64. Too low. I need to keep going. 5.9 times 5.9 equals 34.81. 34.81. Now this right here was too low, and that right there was too high. So let's think of this one as too low. It is too low by 0.36 of a whole number. This one is too high by 0.81 of a whole number. So this is going to be my closest one. Therefore, I'm going to make a conclusion and say that the square root of 34 is approximately 5.8. Let's put a box around this one right here, and let's go ahead and highlight it. Now my next step is to locate it on a number line. So we said it's going to be between 5 and 6. Now right here in the middle, that's 5.5. Now this one right here is approximately 5.8. So it's got to be very close to the 6. So maybe about right, I'm going to make a point right there, a dot. And this right here is going to be the square root of 34. Okay, so let's make sure that we can also put it on a number line. Oh, I erased too much. Okay. Square root of 34. Okay. So on the next one, you're going to go ahead and try it on your own and then check your answer. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Okay, so I tried this one right here for the square root of 11, And I noticed that it's closer to the square root of 9 than it is to the square root of 16, but it's got to be somewhere between 3 and 4. So I went ahead and I multiplied 3.2 times 3.2, which got me this. I'm too low. 3.3 times 3.3, 10.89, that's still too low. 3.4 times 3.4, 1156, that's too high. So now this is where we decide which one got closest to the square root of 11. Now this one right here is off by 0.11 of a whole number, and this one is too high by 0.56 of a whole number. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this one right here is the closest. So my square root of 11 is approximately 3.3. I'm going to put a box around there, and that's going to be my final answer. And then I go to my number line and I go ahead and write down, okay, so if this is 3 and this is 4, in the middle is 3.5, and I'm looking for the number that's 3.3. So it's got to be kind of close to 3.5, maybe about right here. So that's going to be the square root of 11, and that's going to be my answer right there as well. Okay, so if you're having any questions, please let me know. So now what you need to do is you need to go ahead and go do your classwork assignment and then your exit ticket. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.